And once again, we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Larry Johnson, my good friend, once again here. How are you doing, man?
Good day. Bom dia. Or boa
Bom
tarde.
dia.
Boa tarde.
What?
Okay.
What?
Whatever. Hello.
Whatever.
Yeah. It's it's morning, afternoon, and night somewhere.
Exactly. There's you know, a crazy head saying that says it's always 4:20 somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So
Well, they stole that from Jimmy Buffett.
yeah, exactly.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. And so, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are going to talk about, well, perhaps World War III. Who knows? But let's start with Charlie Kirk, man.
Yeah.
There was some new evidence, and you made an excellent post on sonar21.com about this from a video of Chris Matterson's uh,
Martinson, yes.
Martinson. The analysis of of Chris was amazing. I was watching it today because I have to watch this to see how far we were from what we were discussing some weeks ago. Not too far, but yeah, there is some more deep dive on it. How do you what do you want to say about that, Matt?
Yeah, I try to differentiate between actual what we know or what we can see as opposed to what we think or believe. So the first thing we know is that there was a loud shot. To me, it sounded very much like a rifle shot, but we did have this loud noise. And almost instantly, with that loud noise, we see a physical reaction in Charlie Kirk's body where he had come forward, and then suddenly you also see when you slow the film down frame by frame, the neck swells, the shirt pops up, and it also pops up in the back. Um, and I was, I didn't have the full explanation for that, but that's what we see. And then, the area of the neck where it's hit is where the carotid artery is. And, if you cut a carotid artery, if you cut any artery, femoral, uh, the blood pumps out, it sprays. The water just shoots. It's like a fire hose, one of those sprinklers where the water goes out and something hits it in front, and the water boop 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 boop. That's an arterial bleed. Well, we didn't see an arterial bleed. We saw like this sudden, blood starts flowing, and then it just poured out like you'd opened a beer tap. So, and Charlie's dead. He's dead almost instantaneously. Uh, that's what we know for sure. Well, the other thing what the FBI claims that they know is that Charlie was killed with a 30-06 rifle round. Uh, there is no way on God's green earth, no way in hell that the bullet that hit Charlie came from a 30-06 rifle round. Uh, because those rounds, when they're fired, and I can take you to, there's a one YouTube channel called Valhalla VFT. Um, there are a variety of others which show people shooting 30-06 rifles at ballistic gel dummies, at uh, cow femurs. The femur that holds a cow, 2,000-pound cow up. Those things are thicker than my arm. Uh, about the size of two of my arms. And whenever that bullet hits, it shatters, destroys. In other words, if Charlie Kirk had been hit with that bullet, it would have literally blown his head off or caused so much damage to the neck that his head would have been partially severed or potentially completely severed. So we know it was not a 30-06 by virtue of what we see from the gunshot wound. So right there off the bat, we know that the FBI is lying. They are not, or the local police are lying. There was also a video released showing the alleged shooter running across the roof after the shooting. A couple of problems with that video. One, that video, its field, should have captured him, the shooter, lying down and making the shot. Well, they don't show that. Now, why have they held it back deliberately, or are they claiming they don't have it? The other thing, though, is when you slow the video down, you can see that as the individual runs, you see his shadow on the ground. And then all of a sudden, the shadow disappears. And then as he's climbing down off the roof, if you look in the background, you see there are people walking on a sidewalk. They get behind a tree and then they disappear. They don't come out the other side. And it's like, and it's not like the tree's so wide that you couldn't see them. So clearly, what we also know is the video has been manipulated. We know for a fact that normal crime scene procedures for securing an area, securing evidence, did not happen. Was that a deliberate choice, or because these folks were incompetent? The video,
Too much incompetence going on.
yeah. So the video you referenced that I sent out with by Chris Martenson, I don't always agree with a lot of what he said in the past. I'm not some fanboy of his, but I thought he did a very good job of presenting what was known, what was unknown, and I could bet $1 million that if Tyler Robinson, the alleged shooter, is brought on to trial on these charges, that he will walk free. He will be acquitted, because all you have to do is raise reasonable doubt that he was in fact the shooter. And if they claim that the only thing that they can tie him to is a 30-06, all you got to do is just show Chris Martinson's video, and maybe even create a live demonstration so the jurors can see for themselves that there's no way in hell that the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk came from a rifle. Now we also know that there's been an enormous amount of, I call it, running squirrels introduced into this. If you've ever taken a dog for a walk and all of a sudden a squirrel runs across their path, that dog goes, "Squirrel!" and goes chasing the squirrel, tries to. So what has been unleashed are a bunch of squirrels. The shot came from the side. It was a guy up in the stands who shot him through the ear and it came out the neck. No. It was a security guard in front with a palm pistol that shot him. No. It was a microphone, an exploding microphone. That's my favorite one. That's the biggest piece of crap and lie.
That's cool.
Because, number one, just the size of it, it doesn't contain enough. If you packed it full of gunpowder or some plastic explosive, and then how do you fire a bullet? So there's got to be in some sort of cartridge to fire a bullet that from here it would go through this side of the neck, and that's not what happened. We didn't see that. Number two, if that thing does, quote, detonate, if it detonates, it should, and it's projecting something this way, that means that microphone should move like this. But that's not what happened. You watch it and the microphone goes, "Whoa." So how does it explode and move forward? So I mean, it's just another goddamn lie. So who's putting these lies out? Why are they muddying the water so dramatically and then putting out so many red herrings or running squirrels? Because they don't want the investigators to focus up on who really did this. This was an organized assassination. I don't know precisely who is behind it. I have my own suspicions, but it's clear that it's even possible that the police themselves were involved. in allowing this or making this possible to happen, or someone in a leadership position. I'm not saying that officers on scene were necessarily involved, but it stinks to high heaven. And the FBI, in my view, has completely discredited itself in this.
Well, I think one point,
I rant.
yeah, I think one point that this video from Chris Martinson showed that is extremely important is that it seems that there was no autopsy.
Yeah, and we still don't know if they didn't perform an autopsy and explain, because let me explain why that that the bullet. When I think, having watched a variety of ballistic impacts on ballistic gel, that round very well could have been fired from a 300 blackout, which oddly enough it does have some of the same diameter as a 30-06, but it doesn't carry the same force, the same weight, the same penetration. And specifically, if that was the round that hit him, as it goes in, let's say at a 20-degree angle into the neck, and when it's moving, you can't see it move. This is all happening in less than a second, but that it enters, deflects off the spinal column, and basically it doesn't explode, and it doesn't have another charge on it. But let's say that it was a hollow point, so the design to expand, and the cavitation. So you know what cavitation means, right? It's
Yep.
it's basically waves that are created, and so when it goes in, the waves created off of one of these 300 blackout is huge, which explains why we saw Charlie's, as he's going down, the neck expands, chest expands, back of the shirt pops off. There was basically an explosion in his chest that instantly destroyed the heart. It either completely separated all the arteries coming out of the heart that would go to the carotid and others, so that no more blood could be pumped. And that's why we saw, and also, as that bullet goes into the hole, it's carrying force and energy, and there's energy that blows back, much like a rocket engine as it's taken off, has that trail of thrust behind it. So that's why we also saw then that blood being forced out. It was following the path of least resistance. And that's what Martinson basically showed. That all of a sudden now, that makes sense with what we're seeing. Because all this other stuff that they're claiming doesn't make sense. The exploding microphone that goes the direction of the supposed explosion, the ear shot where you don't see any blood or anything from the ear, and when the bullet exit, no blood spray coming out, particularly from a severed carotid. But when you look at the video, you can noticeably see the neck expands. I mean, it's just so fast. And I mean, he was dead. He was dead in an instant, because his hands and everything stiffened. He stiffened up, because that means he suffered damage to the cerebral cortex, and just awful. But the question is, who killed him? But this was not Tyler Robinson pissed off at Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk correctly believes that men are men, women are women, and dudes shouldn't be running around pretending to be women, and vice versa. And just because Tyler is a undeclared homosexual with in a relationship with some guy that's transitioning to be a woman, he didn't kill Charlie Kirk. Someone else did.
Yeah. Yeah, I have watched. I think it was Redacted. Natalie Morris and Clayton Morris. Natalie usually do fantastic investigative work, and it seems that there are some images of this guy,
Hmm.
the shooter, uh, on an ice cream shop that is like
Yeah, Dairy.
45 minutes.
Well, Dairy Queen. Yeah, the shot of this Dairy Queen, which now 2 weeks later, that Dairy Queen's gone.
Oh wow.
It's gone. They emptied. It's empty.
Coincidence.
Yeah, you got to say, boy, that's strange. It's emptied out. Not a person, not a piece of furniture remains inside. Yeah. So this is yeah, if you may have seen it. I did Natalie and Clayton's show yesterday, redacted.
Oh, I haven't. Sorry,
Oh,
but
you know,
you're an habitué there. I do like their show a lot. I have talked with Natalie before as well. I wanted to bring her here.
oh, okay. Yeah, no, they're a good team.
Yeah, yeah. I do like their show. Too mainstream. Right now, I'm looking at some things, but every now and then I go there and I check. Not criticizing. I do like the show. I do
Yeah,
like their performance. Right now, they focus on things that are not focused for my channel.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I
That's
every now and then, like this was very interesting. I really enjoyed this piece that she put out together, or they put out together, of course. And it was that we discussed this thing, the stiffing hands, and also the immediate death, most likely. So we were pretty much on the track there on that week. And I think that thing on the rifle, for me, was a no-no. Oh,
yeah,
they found a rifle in the middle of the grass with amounts and amounts of proofs there, of data there. Um, you remember that movie Minority Report,
yeah,
where they find they create a scene so the police officer would find the guy and kill the guy. At that point, he mentions this. This is what we call an orgy of evidence,
yeah.
an orgy of evidence. That's when you have too much things, just sitting around. That's like, that's funny.
Yeah, we've got to figure out why Charlie Kirk was killed and who killed him. You know, was he
Yeah.
killed to shut him up? Some have speculated that Israel was worried that Charlie was becoming too influential among the younger voters, the under 30, there is actual evidence that support for Israel is dramatically eroded in the United States. So he had to be taken out to stop that, and then try to replace him with someone who is an ardent Zionist and would no longer entertain people like Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or Dave Smith speaking at a TPU USA event. That's one possibility that has to be looked at. There's clear evidence he was under pressure, and for the people to say, "Well, but you're making a big jump that Israel might assassinate people," I go, "Really? That's your argument?" Tell that to the Hamas negotiators in Qatar 3 weeks ago. Tell that to the Iranian scientists and government officials and military officials that were assassinated on June 13th. Uh, so we can go down the long list of, tell that to Hania, assassinated, the former prime minister or president of the Palestinian Authority, assassinated in Tehran a year ago. So, you know, uh, Israel has been very vocal about its, policy of assassinating people that it wants to get rid of. So, it's natural to look at them for that. Uh, but you know, or was this was the intent behind this to uh, try to, if you will, create a civil war in the United States to create such a divide between the people that support the Charlie Kirks and people that hate Charlie Kirks that they'll start killing each other. And that's a possibility too. So uh, whoever did this was engaged with evil. And the only thing we can hope is that out of this evil comes something good, in terms of, Charlie's basic message about let's have dialogue and debate as opposed to killing each other, that becomes the theme.
Yeah, that's a good way to spin this. This is a perfect way to spin this. So yeah, since we're still in the United States, let's keep on the United States a little bit, and I want to talk about your one of your latest posts on Sonar 21, which was kind of contradictory to two posts before about Donald Trump and the Ukraine narrative. You know, the General Kellogg's cornflakes narrative of Ukraine is winning, and Trump was like, "Yay, Ukraine is winning."
Oh,
But then you wrote a post like 2 or 3 days after, like, "Ah, I got it. Ukraine is winning, so you don't need the United States."
yeah, no, well, the point was that um, the initial impression that this was Trump buying fully into the narrative. But then when you step back and look, okay, as a result of buying fully into the narrative, then he says, okay, yeah, man, we're gonna turn the aid back on to Ukraine. We're gonna give them whatever they need. Yeah, we're gonna get fully invested in this war. He did the opposite. He just basically said, hey, Ukraine, Russia, good luck. And NATO's welcome to buy any weapon from us they want and give it to Ukraine. Be our guest. Well, you know, what's not being said there is one, the United States has limited ability to produce weapons. Two, they don't have a large inventory right now on hand to sell to NATO. And NATO's not even convinced within its own group that they want to go that far. And while talking tough about attacking Russia, in terms of them uniting and actually moving in that direction, they're not doing it. They're splitting, fragmenting. It's like you've hit a ball of mercury and it's broken up into smaller balls.
Yeah, and plus, one of the biggest financiers of NATO is the United States, so it's
Yeah,
basically
well,
American money anyway.
that's where Trump is like pretending like NATO's not, U.S. has nothing to do with NATO. Yeah, you people over there in NATO, you need to get your act together. You go, oh, wait a second, we're the biggest funder of it. Oh, so ignore that.
Yeah, but what about this tomahawk thing? The tomahawks.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, the three versions of it: air launched, sea launched, ground launched. Uh, the ground launch is a problem because there are not a lot of launchers. The air launched and sea launch only had one purpose: to carry a nuclear warhead. Uh, well, that was their primary purpose. So to provide those to Ukraine means Ukraine's not going to have capability of air launched or sea launched. They would have to have ground launched. And the problem is just scarcity, number one. But the other point is, even though the Tomahawk is a subsonic, uh, it was at one time configured as a nuclear warhead carrying weapon. Now that particular variant has not been in production. My understanding is like for more than 10 years, perhaps longer. However, if you're a Russian military planner, a Russian intelligence officer, on the military and analyst, you can't make the assumption that the Americans aren't going to put a nuclear warhead on it. So immediately, if it's fired, Russia's got to react as if it's under nuclear attack, which means the introduction of tomahawks into theater would push us closer to actual war. And one of the key targets in that war would be U.S. military and communication satellites. So all this great internet that we enjoy right now, and my ability to talk to you and such, that would disappear overnight. The world would go blind for a while, and we wouldn't really know what's going on until you know the fire stopped burning. So it's a potentially very, very ugly situation.
yeah, so just for me to understand this, because this is something that I'm completely ignorant about. The land Okay, the air and the sea, I got it. Full nuclear. The land is optional or is
No,
not nuclear
no,
whatsoever.
no, the land can be nuclear as well. The problem is the launcher. So it's like
I
on
know.
this big truck, which, comes up and then would fire off of that launcher. They don't have enough of those launchers. They don't have a surplus. So finding tomahawks that, you might even have a few of the missiles. My understanding, there's like fewer than 4,000, or there were 4,000, and those numbers have been depleted over the years. Um, Remember, this missile, it's as old as you. Okay. It's
Yep.
your age, 44 years ago or 43 years ago. Okay. So um, it was it's sort of, I guess, first came online like 1982, 83, but they started working on in the 70s. So we're not talking modern technology here. Yeah, they've updated it and, so, oh, yeah, we've just new and improved, but it's not like the Iskander, the Kinshal, the Oreshnik. So
Nor the air defenses.
it is very susceptible to air defense, even though it flies low. Uh, that was the original assumption that the United States made, that Russia could not detect it, something that low, but that's no longer the case. They're absolutely detecting drones that are flying low like that. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was reading this article, Larry, about the tomahawks and everything, and there was a very interesting comment about the stage, a collapsing stage of the United States economy, and of course, Western world's economy, what's called the collective West economy, and that's what I've been saying here for some time about Russian and Chinese, to that matter, view of things, and they do believe at the long run. Well, yeah, they're going to collapse eventually. Who has and in your article you mentioned this? Whose economy can last longer? How do you think the United States can handle this situation? About collapsing its own economy again, because let's be honest, that's what they did with Iraq. That's what they did with Yugoslavia and everything. Vietnam. This time is recoverable. I don't see like that. What do you think?
okay, I'm not sure. What do you mean we collapsed Vietnam and Iraq?
Collapsing economy. The economy collapsed. It was recoverable, but it collapsed. It has a big drop. You had
But you mean
Viet,
the U.S. economy or those foreign
the
economies?
U.S. economy.
Well, yeah, the U.S. economy didn't really collapse. We did have a financial crisis in 2008. Was sort of the last one. Uh, the U.S. Um, there is a lot of analysis on YouTube with financial analysts predicting some very dire things for the United States. That the combination of the U.S. debt, which continues to grow, uh, the decline in revenues, despite Trump's claim that he's making all this money off of tariffs, the actions he's uh, taking with respect to tariffs, imposing like tariffs on furniture that's being imported into the United States. Yeah, he would prefer that furniture and pharmaceuticals and all that be made in the United States. Great, but if you're going to start tariffing that, it's going to create a supply chain disruption, and that supply chain disruption has an effect that is likely to drive prices of those goods up, which means that will inflate, cause inflation to be taking place, as well as, by virtue of making it more expensive, will reduce the economic activity, which means you're in recession. So when you get a combination of inflation and recession called stagflation, It's a very difficult scenario, and then it's compounded by the fact that we've seen BRICS moving in the opposite direction to no longer be tied to or dependent on the U.S. economy or the U.S. dollar. So the United States faces some real economic challenges. The problem, or the big mistake it's making, is the assumption that they can create enough chaos and pain in Russia that it will cause Russia to collapse. And I think the irony here is the U.S. efforts in that regard are going to blow back, and it will be the United States that will collapse long before Russia ever will.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that this brings the need for the United States to, you know, put some hands in some cash, which will take me for the next subject, Venezuela, dude.
What is what?
Venezuela.
Oh yeah, Venezuela.
Ah, yeah. You wrote also a great piece on. You see, I read your blog.
As you should.
You,
As you should.
as I should.
It's your
Uh,
requirement. All right. I,
no, that's
I,
that.
I
That's the
apologize.
minimum I
I,
should do.
I apologize for the harassment.
Don't ever apologize for being right
So
and being sure.
yeah, always sure, never right. Um, yeah,
Now,
I just
just
I
yeah,
started asking a question. So I've spent a lot of time in Central and South America. For God, my first trip to Honduras was back in 1978. 78? Yeah.
I was
So
almost getting born.
yeah, yeah, 1978. So, I've been involved sur de la frontera, longer than you've been alive. Okay,
Yeah,
and I've watched the development, the growth of the Colombian drug cartels and the spread of narcotics activity. I've been investigating product counterfeiting that passes through Cologne Free Trade Zone. Identified
money laundering.
money laundering going through Maicao, Colombia. Been into the San Andresitos of Bogota. These black markets. I've been there actually undercover with glasses, filming certain products and purchases. So I'd never really heard of Tren de Aragua until like last year. So I started doing some research. So, man, when did we first start hearing about this? And in fact, what's really interesting, um, there's an author named Landers just put a piece out uh, talking about a former CIA officer, Gary Burnson, and his partner, a guy I think is the guy's name is Martin Rodil or Rodili. Um, and Gary was he was I know Gary, considered him a friend, but he hasn't communicated with me for a while. But he was the deputy chief of station in Uruguay in Montevideo just before the 9/11 attack. He was there during the 9/11 attack. But the reason he's relevant to the 9/11 is he was the last CIA officer on the ground in Afghanistan prior to the 9/11 attacks. So he ended up going back there. But anyway, he was involved with asset recoveries and things in South America. And he admitted the first time he heard of Tren de Aragua was 2023. Well, so I went back, did some research, and the first mention of Tren de Aragua is 2018. Well, 2018 coincides with the time that Donald Trump signed a presidential finding authorizing a CIA operation to destabilize and cause regime change in Venezuela. Anyway, that's my belief. I have not seen a document to that effect. I've not had somebody who's involved with the program tell me that, but I know how this works. That's exactly what was done because there were other admissions that the CIA was actually involved starting in 2018. It was called putting maximum pressure on Maduro to try to incite a coup, to incite regime change, replace him with Juan Guaido. So, in my view, I think at a minimum, the CIA played a role in helping create or uh, sustain
Financing, yes.
Tren de Aragua as a group that would be presented as a formidable threat to the United States in order to justify, oh my God, we got to take out this drug trafficking, child trafficking organization, or it's going to destroy us. So we need an excuse to invade Venezuela. So it was. This is. I view Tren de Aragua as a false flag operation of sorts.
Yeah,
And
I
no, go ahead.
now what I found very interesting is that this was always something punching my head. I have never, I was not very politicized on my youth, but back on the 80s and 90s there was not much we could do. To watch the soap opera, we had to watch the national newspaper on TV,
Yeah.
then the soap opera. So potato potato, we were going there and watching the national, and remembering things later. So I had never heard about Al Qaeda, for example, before 9/11. Then I had never heard about ISIS before, Syria and some other stuff going on. And later on, I started researching this, and this is exactly what you just described about Tren de Aragua is my impressions on things. Just a couple of weeks ago, some weeks ago, I told you about this, this narrative about the PCC, the first capital command, and the CV, the Red Command on Brazil, that are two drug
Right.
dealing
Right.
factions, and you had never heard about that. You. And now it's a danger for democracy and all that, and
Yeah. Well,
it's the same. I had never heard about Tren de Aragua. I heard about Sinaloa cartel. I heard about the cartel de Cali, cartel de Bogota. All those things we have heard about.
yeah, but here's the difference. I draw a big difference between Al Qaeda and Tren de Aragua. What has Tren de Aragua actually done? Can you name to me one major attack, one major terrorist attack? So with Al Qaeda, actually, I was the one who was the source for the first article on bin Laden and Al Qaeda that appeared in the New York Times in August of 1994. I was the source because I had been contacted by my old office, my boss, um, previous boss, give me a call. I said, "Man," he says, "we need to get the word out on this Al Qaeda organization and Bin Laden because we're really seeing some disturbing things." And it turned out that Al Qaeda sort of emerged out of the bombing of the First World Trade Center in 1993. There and then 94, you had the Project Bojinka. It was an attempt to blow up jumbo liners, airliners transiting the Pacific. Um, they did have a successful. They did a test run on one plane that they took the explosive on. They built the explosive on board the plane. Ramzi Youssef, the bomber of the First World Trade Center, he did it, and it killed a Japanese passenger. Uh, then after that, you had the attacks in Saudi Arabia in '95, I believe, on the Khobar Towers. Uh, that was killed a bunch of Saudis. Um, then the next major attack, I think, was '98. The twin embassy bombings in East Africa and Tanzania and Kenya. Then that was followed by the attack on the USS Cole. So my point is that Al Qaeda was not just a CIA creation. Al Qaeda was a genuine organization with a specific mission to attack and destroy the West for its meddling in the Middle East. Um, they didn't hate us because of our freedom. They hated us because of our interference. Completely different MO than Tren de Aragua. I mean, again, what has Tren de Aragua done? And they're going,
Drug dealing.
yeah, well, drug dealing and child trafficking. Well, hell, Mexico leads the pack there, and Colombia. So, the Venezuelan side has been just a small potatoes operation in comparison. but yet it's being presented as this is this massive threat that we don't mobilize 4 missile destroyers and a cruise and a missile cruiser carrying missiles, as well as 3 amphibious ships carrying 5,000 Marines to go after Colombia or Mexico. Oh, hell no, man, we're going after Venezuela. So, as I said, this is all a contrivance, trying to create a rationale, justification that it has, there's another purpose afoot.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. This is a perfect analysis, in my opinion. Of course it is, because you're always sure. Perhaps not.
Yeah, yeah, always sure.
Man, to finish and let you get out of here, I'd just like to, pinpoint about Ukraine false flags and the peace plan for Israel. What about
Well,
these false flags? This is so stupid. I mean,
well, the
fools are
European,
making fun of it.
yeah, Ukraine is definitely going to try to create a false flag to try to bring the United States into the war. I don't think it'll work, and all it's going to do is intensify Russia's, you know, Russia has not gone to a full war footing yet. Uh, but if any attack comes out of Europe in response to this false flag, then you'll see Russia mobilize and go on a level of intensity that we haven't seen heretofore. Uh, with respect to this announcement yesterday at the Oval Office between Trump and Netanyahu, that so-called peace plan is dead on arrival. It's not going to go anywhere. Um, the Gulf Arabs have expressed, yeah, no, we can support it as long as it includes a two-state solution. And Netanyahu said, "Fuck your two-state solution. It's never going to happen. Never." Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
that's pretty clear. There's not, the whole without a two-state solution, without a protection of the Palestinian rights, this thing's going to be dead in the water, and Israel's going to try to kill its way and destroy all of the Palestinians. Uh, this is this is really a continuation of what Trump talked about back in February, where oh, we're gonna build and develop all these beautiful hotels and condos on the beach. It'll be a great beach resort. And I knew that was what was back on the table when at this press conference. Who walks in with him? His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who's been out openly talking about building those condos. So, you know, they are terrible human beings in my view.
to be extremely honest about this situation, about this, real estate situation. I would simply love to see that place, that land piece filled with resorts. It, with Palestinian people, with Palestinian companies, with, the land being theirs and peaceful.
Yeah.
Because I've been to those regions on the Middle East, and it's just beautiful. It's just
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, look, the reality is
With their rules.
these Zionists have stolen the land of the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are doing no less than Native Americans did in this country, fighting back against Europeans who came in and stole their land. And unfortunately, some of my ancestors were part of that. But
Well,
but it
we
is it
cannot
is
pay
what
the
it
price
is.
for the sins of the past.
We
There's
don't. But we try to excuse our genocide by labeling those who fight and resist against it as terrorists, when the ones actually applying the terrorism, the killing, the use of violence for political purpose, that's the Israeli government right now.
Yeah, exactly. Can't we all just go, don't, just get along? Holy
Yeah,
crap, is that difficult? Is that
yeah.
hard? Jesus Christ. Man, thank you very much once again. So to everybody, next week I'll be away. So see you in 2 weeks,
Two
perhaps.
weeks. Okay.
2 weeks. And don't forget to follow Larry on sonar21.com. Like, share, subscribe if you like the video. I will try to translate it to Portuguese, I promise, but I cannot promise you that hard. Man, have a nice week or two and see you around.
Yeah,
Thank you,
ciao.
everybody.
Ciao.
Ah,
Arrivederci.
arrivederci. Ciao, everybody.
All right, man. Take care.